one of the things about Big Frank I wanted to mention too is that perhaps the greatest scene, it's an extended scene, and along with the rape and the dog scene with Gino, is this extended conversation Frank has with a couple of his goons um, prior to meeting Joey Greco and Gino Vincetti. And he just starts bullshitting about his life. And he goes on about how his war history,
Yeah.
and he relates this tale about how he killed a lieutenant officer
Yeah.
because he was the soldiers were in mid raping this prisoner of war, and then the lieutenant stopped them, and Big Frank, like he does in everything, figured out a way to move ahead in the world. And one of the things too about that scene is that it transitions from this whole scene, which like you mentioned before, they don't really know exactly the depth of which they're talking about, because they're talking about a world war in the Pacific theater and also talking about things more cosmic than they can entertain. And it naturally transitions to the scene with Gino and Joey Greco where Big Frank strings them along. Before that, too, you also get the sense of what a master manipulator Big Frank is, because there's scenes where he's clearly lying. The reader knows this, but the characters don't, and he does so naturally and so convincingly, and with very Harry Lime charm, that you really get the sense of the character in that scene. And like I said, this character has only two major scenes, really. The one extended conversation, and then prior to that, the scene with Tony D. Yet you get a completely fully realized character, and even though he's a tertiary character, you could say that he's as fully realized as the three brothers, although Manny Cole is probably the best plumbed of all of them.
Well, the Big Frank scene for World War II, I talked about Dublin. That's a companion piece. I think earlier on, I have a minor character, this weird old man, who talks about serving in the Battle of Attu Island in the
That's another
Aleutians.
doubling, yes.
Yeah, and so I have the South Pacific and the North Pacific. Here you have a scene where in the earlier one with the other guy, he gives up. He watches some guy give his life selflessly. I forget what the character is, but the character runs along the snow and he gets splattered or whatnot, and his head gets shot off, but he still runs for another 20 yards like a chicken. And it's something that's an interesting scene. And then you get Big Frank, who I think Big Frank. I say he.
That scene, though, and before you,
Yeah.
that scene is twisted too, because we learn that it wasn't necessarily selfish. It could have been out of complete stupidity that he did that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, most there are not going to be many highly virtuous characters, and even the most evil characters are going to have positive things. Big Frank, for example, we get a little bit of a sense of him. We find out, I think, in this book that he has some issues with his daughter, and that's explored a little bit later in the next book in the quartet. But we get a sense that he's a human being too, even if he's evil. And but Big Frank, for example, is with the CBs. He's not even on the front lines. I think I might imply or might have stated that he didn't qualify, I guess, morally or whatnot. But he's always behind. He's not at Guadalcanal. He's on the cleanup people that come after Guadalcanal, and they've gone on to the next island. And so these things happen. So he's basically, I think when they find the Japanese girl or whatnot, most of the battle has moved on to another island. So he's sort of a scavenger there. He's a predator. But he's after Karen. He goes after the very weak. Big Frank is not someone that is going to necessarily come after you directly, even though he's a huge character. He's described in both of the books as at least 6.5 feet, 250, 270 pounds. So this guy is a monster. I mean, he's the size of a linebacker nowadays in professional football, but 50 years ago. And so he's physically a huge man. But he only uses that usually, it seems, for intimidation, because he's a manipulator. He knows how to manipulate things. and he knows how to manipulate the people that work under him. He knows how to manipulate the people around him and other families. He knows the value of knowing when to strike and whatnot. And that another doubling is, as I said, if you contrast him with the Norwegian, the Norwegian is someone who's probably psychotic, more so than psychopathic. Big Frank is a psychopath. Big Frank seems to love manipulating people into doing evil things and suffering. The Norwegian is on the other end. He believes. I mean, he has the classic serial killer thing of, I'm going to rid the world of prostitutes, but he's going to rid the world of evil people. He doesn't take, for example, he will kill people, but he doesn't like to kill women. He doesn't like to. There are certain things, jobs he'll take down. He covers himself with intermediaries, and we get some of his background too, and hit the one chapter that he's in. And both of these characters, I believe, are confined to just one single chapter. They're talked about here and there, but we only see them in one single chapters. So they're more legendary. They're more mythic characters specifically. They're above and beyond the situation that Gino finds himself in.